The alarm screamed through every corridor of the Columbus. Captain Danny Morrison gripped his chair as the ship shook violently. One moment they had been traveling through hyperspace, charting unexplored regions at the edge of known space. The next moment, something had grabbed them and pulled them out of their jump. "What happened?" Danny shouted over the noise. Lieutenant Kyle Harrison's hands flew across the navigation controls. Sweat ran down his face. "Unknown gravitational field, Captain. It pulled us right out of hyperspace. I've never seen anything like this." The ship's hull groaned as they hit the upper atmosphere of a planet that wasn't supposed to be there. Their maps showed nothing in this sector. No worlds, no stars, nothing but empty space. Yet here they were, falling toward a planet's surface with failing engines and dying systems. Navigator Lisa Chen worked frantically at her station. Her screen flickered and died, then came back to life showing fragmented data. "I'm reading oxygen in the atmosphere, nitrogen, it's breathable, but there's something wrong with the readings. The electromagnetic field is all over the place." Danny hit the ship-wide communications. "All hands, brace for crash landing. This is not a drill. Get to your emergency positions now." Throughout the Columbus, 47 crew members scrambled to secure themselves. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Greg Palmer shut down the reactor to prevent an explosion. In the medical bay, Dr. Jake Bennett strapped down equipment and prepared for casualties. Security Officer Megan Torres made sure everyone on her team was accounted for. The ship hit the planet's thick cloud layer. Rain and wind battered the hull. Lightning struck their port side, causing another system failure. The main engines were completely dead now. They were nothing more than a falling metal coffin. Kyle fought with the controls, trying to angle their descent. "I need more power to the maneuvering thrusters." "There is no more power." Greg's voice came through the intercom. "Everything's dead or dying. We're going in hard." Lisa's eyes went wide as she stared at her screen. "Captain, I'm reading life signs on the surface, a lot of them. This planet is inhabited." Danny's mind raced. An inhabited world in unexplored space. A gravitational anomaly that could pull ships from hyperspace. None of this made sense. But there was no time to figure it out now. The Columbus broke through the clouds. Below them stretched an endless green jungle. Massive trees with purple and blue leaves covered every inch of land. In the distance, mountains rose like ancient towers. It would have been beautiful if they weren't about to crash into it. 30 seconds to impact, Kyle said, his voice surprisingly calm. Danny gripped the armrests of his chair. "Everyone hold on." The ship hit the jungle canopy at tremendous speed. The sound was deafening. Metal screamed as branches and tree trunks tore into the hull. The Columbus carved a path through the forest, destroying everything in its way. Crew members cried out as they were thrown against their restraints. The ship's back section tore away with a horrible grinding noise. The communications array ripped off. Pieces of the hull peeled away like paper. They were being torn apart. Lisa's station exploded in a shower of sparks. She screamed and covered her face. Kyle kept his hands on the controls even though they did nothing anymore. Danny could only watch as his ship died around him. The Columbus finally slammed into a cliff face and stopped. The sudden halt was almost worse than the crash itself. The sound of groaning metal and falling debris filled the air. Then, slowly, silence fell. Danny's ears rang. His head pounded. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. He was alive. He unbuckled his restraints with shaking hands and stood on unsteady legs. "Report," he said hoarsely. "Anyone, report." Kyle groaned and raised his hand. He was alive. Lisa was unconscious but breathing. Around the bridge, 2 other crew members moved slowly, checking themselves for injuries. Danny made his way through the damaged ship. The corridors were twisted and broken. Smoke filled the air. He found crew members pulling themselves from the wreckage. Some were crying, some were silent with shock, and some weren't moving at all. Greg met him near the engine room. The engineer's arm hung at an odd angle, clearly broken. "We lost the entire back section, Captain. At least 15 people were back there. The reactor is stable, but the hyperspace drive is completely destroyed. We're not jumping out of here." Jake appeared from the medical bay, his uniform covered in blood. Not his own. 17 dead, Captain. Maybe more. I have 20 injured, some critical. I need help. Danny felt the weight of command crushing down on him. 17 dead. His crew. His responsibility. He pushed the grief away. There would be time for that later. Right now, the survivors needed him. "Get the injured stabilized," he told Jake. "Greg, see what systems we can salvage. Kyle, try to get the emergency beacon working. Megan, I need a security perimeter around the crash site." As the crew worked through the day, Danny assessed their situation. The communications array was gone. The hyperspace drive was shattered beyond repair. Their emergency beacon was transmitting, but they were so far off any established route that rescue might never come. They had food for maybe 3 months, water for less if they couldn't find a clean source. Night fell on the alien world. The sky turned deep purple, and 3 moons rose above the horizon. Strange sounds echoed through the jungle, calls and cries from animals they couldn't see. Megan set up watch positions around the wreck. The crew built small fires for light and warmth. They ate cold rations and tried not to think about the bodies they had buried that afternoon. Danny stood at the edge of their camp, staring into the dark jungle. Lisa joined him, a bandage wrapped around her head. "We're really stuck here, aren't we?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," Danny said. "We are." "You think anyone will find us?" "I don't know. Maybe. Someday." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lisa pointed toward the jungle. "Captain, do you see that?" Danny looked where she pointed. At first he saw nothing. Then he noticed them. Lights. Dozens of small lights moving through the trees. They swayed and bobbed, coming closer. "Wake everyone up," Danny said. "Quietly. We have company." The sun rose slowly over the alien jungle, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Danny had not slept. He stood at the perimeter of their camp, watching the tree line where the lights had appeared the night before. The mysterious visitors had stayed just beyond the firelight for hours, then vanished before dawn. "Captain, you should rest," Megan said, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Real coffee, salvaged from the ship's supplies. It might be one of the last cups they would ever have. Danny took the cup gratefully. "Can't rest. Not yet." "They didn't attack us," Megan pointed out. "That's something. Or they're waiting for reinforcements." A sound made them both turn. The jungle had gone silent. No bird calls, no animal noises, just silence. Then they appeared. They came out of the jungle in a wave, hundreds of them. They were short, about 4 feet tall, with 6 limbs that moved in perfect coordination. Their skin looked like it was made of shifting colors, blue and green and purple flowing across their bodies like water. Large eyes, bigger than human eyes, stared at the crash site with obvious intelligence. "Nobody shoot!" Danny called out. "Weapons down! Slow movements only!" The aliens stopped at the edge of the clearing. They didn't carry any visible weapons. They simply stood there, watching. Their skin rippled with changing colors, and Danny realized they were communicating with each other. He took a slow step forward, hands raised and empty. His heart pounded in his chest. First contact. Humanity had met other species before, but never like this. Never unplanned, never while stranded and helpless. The aliens watched him approach. One of them, slightly larger than the others, stepped forward to meet him. Its skin flashed through a series of colors, bright yellow to deep blue to soft green. Danny had no idea what it meant. "I'm Captain Danny Morrison," he said slowly. "We crashed here. We mean no harm." The alien tilted its head, studying him. Its skin shifted through more colors. Then it reached out slowly with one of its limbs and touched the edge of Danny's uniform. The touch was gentle, curious. Dr. Amy Rodriguez pushed through the gathered crew. She was the ship's xenolinguist, trained in alien communication. Her eyes were bright with excitement despite the situation. "Captain, let me try something," she said. She pulled out her tablet and activated the camera. "I think they're using color patterns to communicate." Like a visual language. She held up the tablet, showing the alien its own reflection. The creature's skin flashed rapidly, a burst of bright colors. Then it touched the screen carefully with one delicate limb. Over the next hour, a careful dance of communication began. The aliens, Amy started calling them builders after watching them work, seemed fascinated by the wreckage. They walked around the Columbus, touching the hull, examining the damage. But they didn't try to take anything or enter the ship. The larger alien, which seemed to be a leader, approached Danny again. Its skin flashed a pattern, then it gestured toward the jungle with two of its limbs. The meaning seemed clear. "Follow me." "I don't think that's a good idea, Captain," Megan said quietly. "We don't have a choice," Danny replied. "We need their help if we're going to survive here." He followed the alien leader into the jungle. Kyle and Amy came with him, along with two security officers. The builders led them through the dense forest, along paths invisible to human eyes. The jungle was full of strange plants and creatures, but the builders moved through it like they owned it. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached a village. Danny stopped and stared. The structures were beautiful, made of woven plant material and carved stone. They rose in spirals and curves, completely different from human architecture, but clearly designed with purpose and skill. The builders led them to a central building. Inside, it was cool and dim. The walls were covered in carvings, images that seemed to tell stories. Amy immediately began recording everything with her tablet. The leader gestured to a pool of clear water in the center of the room. It scooped up water in its limbs and drank, then gestured to the humans, offering them water. Danny cupped his hands and tasted it carefully. It was cool and clean, better than anything they had on the ship. "Thank you," he said. The alien's skin rippled with soft green and blue. Amy was watching intently. "I think that pattern means welcome or friendship," she said. "They're showing us they want to help." Over the following days, a routine developed. The builders brought food to the crash site. Strange fruits and vegetables, but Amy tested them and found them safe for humans to eat. They brought more water. They even brought materials that Greg could use to patch some of the ship's systems. Amy worked day and night to understand their language. She filled notebook after notebook with color patterns and their meanings. The builders seemed patient with her attempts, repeating patterns slowly when she didn't understand. Jake set up a medical tent near the ship. Several crew members were still in bad shape. The builders watched him work with clear interest. One of them, smaller than the others, brought him a plant with purple leaves. Through gestures, it showed him crushing the leaves into paste. Jake was skeptical, but Amy encouraged him to try. The paste turned out to have powerful healing properties. Wounds that should have taken weeks to heal closed in days. It was a gift beyond price. On the 5th day, something changed. Danny was helping Greg salvage parts from the destroyed section of the ship when he noticed the builders acting strangely. They gathered in groups, their skin flashing rapidly in complex patterns. The colors were brighter, more urgent than usual. "Amy, what are they saying?" Danny called. Amy stood among a group of builders, her tablet recording the color patterns. Her face had gone pale. "I'm not completely sure, Captain, but they keep using the same sequence over and over. I think it means old knowledge or ancient way, and this pattern here, I've seen it before. It means build or construct." By evening, hundreds more builders had arrived. They moved into the jungle beyond the crash site, and began clearing a large circular area. They worked with incredible speed and coordination, removing trees and plants, leveling the ground. Kyle watched them with growing amazement. "What are they building?" "I don't know," Danny said, "but it's big. Really big." The builders worked through the night. They brought tools, some made of stone and wood, others that looked far more advanced. They quarried stone from nearby cliffs and carried it to the cleared area. They dug deep foundations in perfect circles. Amy spent the entire night with the builder leader, trying to understand. The alien was patient, repeating patterns over and over. Finally, as the sun rose on the 6th day, Amy came running back to camp. "Captain, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. "They showed me something, a cave about a mile from here. There are carvings on the walls, old carvings." "How old?" "Very old. And Captain, some of them look like spacecraft. Not like ours exactly, but close enough. I think other humans have been here before." Danny felt ice run down his spine. "That's impossible. This sector has never been explored." "I know, but the carvings don't lie. Someone was here, a long time ago, and I think the builders remember." They went to the cave together. Inside, the walls were covered in ancient carvings, images of ships falling from the sky, images of tall beings with 2 legs working alongside the builders, and in the center, a massive carved diagram showing something that looked like a launch platform. "They're building this," Amy whispered, pointing at the carving. "Whatever this is, they're building it for us. They've done it before." Danny stared at the ancient carvings, his mind racing. Other humans, stranded just like them, and the builders had helped them, had built something to help them escape. "How long ago?" he asked. The construction site had transformed into something that looked like controlled chaos. Thousands of builders moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what to do. They worked in shifts that never stopped, day and night, building something that grew larger with each passing hour. Danny stood at the edge of the site with Pete Anderson, the ship's archaeologist. Pete hadn't stopped staring at the growing structure since the builders started working. His hands shook as he raised his binoculars to get a better look. "This is impossible," Pete said for the 10th time that morning. "Absolutely impossible." "What exactly are we looking at?" Danny asked. Pete lowered the binoculars and turned to his captain. "A launch platform. Not like anything we use now, but the basic design is the same. They're building a way to get something into orbit." Danny felt his heart skip a beat. "You're sure?" "I've studied ancient space technology my whole career, Captain. This follows the same principles as the first orbital launchers humans built back on Earth. But the execution is different. More advanced in some ways, more primitive in others. It's like someone combined our early space program with alien engineering." They watched as builders hauled massive stone blocks into position using a system of pulleys and levers. Other builders worked with metal, heating and shaping it with tools that seemed too advanced for a species that also used stone hammers. And everywhere, there were crystals. Large, glowing crystals that the builders handled with extreme care. Greg approached them, wiping grease from his hands. "Captain, they want me to help them. They keep bringing pieces of the Columbus to the construction site and gesturing for me to show them how the components work." "What kind of components?" "Power regulators, thruster housings, navigation sensors. They're not just building a platform, they're building a ship." Lisa joined them, her tablet full of calculations. "I've been measuring the structure. If my math is right, and if they're using those crystals as a power source, this thing could actually work. It could launch something into orbit." Danny felt a surge of hope so strong it almost hurt. "How long until it's finished?" "At their current pace? Maybe 6 weeks, maybe less. Captain, they know what they're doing. Every builder seems to have the instructions built into them somehow. They don't need blueprints or plans. They just know." Amy arrived with the builder leader. The alien's skin flashed a complex pattern that Amy had learned meant welcome or greeting. She had gotten better at reading their color language, though she admitted she still only understood a fraction of what they communicated. "I need to show you something else," Amy said. "The leader wants to take us back to the cave. There's more writing there, human writing." They returned to the cave system with a small group. The builder leader guided them past the carvings they had seen before, deeper into the tunnels. In a chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi, they found what the alien wanted them to see: a stone tablet, 10 feet tall and covered in carved text, English text. Pete's breath caught in his throat. That's Old English, the kind we used 800 or 900 years ago. Before the language simplified. Danny stepped closer, running his hand over the carved letters. Someone had spent months, maybe years, carving this message into solid stone. "Can you read it?" "Yes," Pete said quietly. "Give me a minute." He pulled out his tablet and began photographing the text, using his translation software to help with the archaic language. As he worked, his expression changed from curiosity to shock to something like awe. "It's a journal," he finally said, "written by someone named Commander Elizabeth Shaw. She was the captain of a ship called the Pathfinder." Danny's blood went cold. The Pathfinder? That was one of the first colony ships. It vanished over 800 years ago. "Not vanished," Pete corrected. "It crashed here, just like we did." Shaw writes that they were pulled from hyperspace by a gravitational anomaly, the same thing that happened to us. Amy translated for the builder leader using color patterns and gestures. The alien's skin flashed bright blue and gold. Colors she had learned meant confirmation or yes. Pete continued reading, translating the ancient text. Shaw's crew survived the crash, but their ship was destroyed. No way to repair it. No way to call for help. They thought they would die here. "But they didn't," Lisa said, pointing at the carvings of humans and builders working together. "No, they met the builders. Shaw writes that the natives were peaceful, curious, helpful. They brought food and water. They showed the humans how to survive on this planet. And when the humans realized they couldn't repair their ship, they came up with another plan." Greg leaned forward. "What plan?" "They would build a new ship. Or rather, a launch system for a shuttle they could construct from salvaged parts. Shaw writes that her chief engineer designed it, combining human technology with the builder's knowledge of the planet's resources. Those crystals we keep seeing, they're not just decorative. They can store and release massive amounts of energy. The planet's electromagnetic field charges them naturally." Danny stared at the text carved in stone. "Did it work? Did they escape?" Pete read further, his finger tracing the words. Shaw writes that they spent 11 months building the launch system. The builders helped with everything. They learned human engineering principles and taught the humans about their construction techniques. It became a true partnership. The launch system was completed in the 12th month after their crash. Shaw and 5 other crew members volunteered to take the shuttle into orbit. Their plan was to reach the nearest navigation beacon and send a rescue signal for the rest of the crew. "Did they make it?" Amy asked. Shaw carved this message before the launch. She writes that if anyone ever finds this, they should know the truth. The builders are friends. They can be trusted. And the launch system works. She had faith it would work. Pete paused, reading the final section of the carved journal. His voice became quiet. She also carved instructions, complete technical specifications for the launch system, every detail of how it works, how to build it, how to use it. She wanted to make sure that if other humans ever came to this world, they would have the knowledge they needed. "There's one more thing," Pete said. "A warning. The gravitational anomaly that pulled the Pathfinder from hyperspace was growing stronger. Shaw calculated that it would eventually become strong enough to pull ships from hyperspace on a regular basis. She believed more humans would come. That's why she left the instructions. That's why she made sure the builders understood what they had built together." The builder leader's skin flashed the pattern for confirmation again. Its large eyes moved from human to human, and Amy could have sworn she saw understanding there. Purpose. "They've been waiting," Amy said softly. "For 800 years they've been waiting for the next humans to come, passing down the knowledge from generation to generation, keeping the promise they made to Shaw and her crew." Danny felt the weight of that realization settle over him. The builders weren't just helping because they were kind. They were honoring a friendship that had lasted centuries. They were keeping faith with humans who had trusted them, who had shared knowledge freely, who had treated them as equals. "Where is Shaw now?" Lisa asked quietly. Pete shook his head. "The journal doesn't say. It ends before the launch. We don't know if she made it to orbit. We don't know if she reached the beacon. We don't know if she ever got home." They stood in silence, surrounded by the ancient message carved in stone. Above them, the sound of construction continued. The builders were building the same launch system their ancestors had built 800 years ago, following the same design, using the same techniques, honoring the same promise. "They're not just building this for us," Danny said. "They're completing something. The work changed everything. Once the human crew understood what the builders were creating, they threw themselves into helping." Greg worked alongside builder engineers, teaching them about modern power systems while learning their crystal technology. Lisa calculated trajectories with builder mathematicians who used color patterns to represent complex equations. Even Jake found ways to help, treating injured builders who hurt themselves during the dangerous construction work. Danny watched it all from the edge of the site, amazed at how naturally the two species worked together. There was no common spoken language, but they found ways to communicate. Gestures, demonstrations, shared problem-solving. The builders would show a technique, the humans would suggest an improvement, and together they would find a better solution. Pete spent most of his time in the cave, carefully documenting every word of Shaw's journal. He had brought portable lights and his best cameras, determined to preserve every detail of the ancient text. On the 10th day after finding the journal, he discovered something new. "Captain, you need to see this," Pete called through the radio. "I found another section. It was hidden behind some mineral deposits. I think Shaw meant for it to be found only by someone who really searched." Danny made his way to the cave with Amy. Pete had cleared away centuries of mineral buildup to reveal more carved text. His hands were dirty and his face was streaked with sweat, but his eyes shone with excitement. "This section is different," Pete explained. "It's more personal, less technical. Shaw writes about the builders themselves, what she learned about them." He began to read, translating the archaic English. "We have been here for 6 months now. I have come to know the builders well. They are a peaceful people, content with their lives but curious about everything. They welcomed us without fear or suspicion. They shared their food and their knowledge freely, asking only that we do the same." Shaw writes that the builders have no written language, at least not in the traditional sense. They pass knowledge through generations using a combination of color patterns, physical demonstrations, and something she calls collective memory. When a builder learns something important, they can somehow share it with their entire community. The knowledge becomes part of their culture within a single generation. Amy's eyes widened. That explains how they remember the launch system design. It's not just passed down through teaching. It's embedded in their cultural memory. Every builder knows the basic principles because their ancestors knew them. Pete continued reading. Shaw writes about the decision to build the launch system. It wasn't easy. Some of her crew wanted to stay, to build a life on this planet. They argued that Earth was dying when they left, that the colonies might not survive. But Shaw believed in the mission. She believed the Pathfinder's crew had families who deserved to know what happened to them. The builders offered to help without hesitation. Shaw was moved by their generosity. She writes, "These people owe us nothing. We crashed into their world uninvited, Yet they treat us like honored guests. They work alongside us as equals. I have never met humans who showed such pure kindness to strangers." Danny felt a tightness in his chest. Shaw's words from 800 years ago perfectly described what he was witnessing now. The Builders' nature hadn't changed. They were still the same people, still offering the same unconditional help. Pete's voice grew quieter as he read the next section. Shaw writes about the launch. 6 people would go, including herself. The shuttle they built could hold no more. The rest would stay and wait for rescue. She writes that leaving them behind was the hardest decision of her life, but someone had to go. Someone had to make sure the rescue came. "And here's the important part," Pete said, his finger tracing a specific paragraph. Shaw writes that the builder leader made them promise something. If they made it home, if they sent rescue, they must tell humanity about this world, about the gravitational anomaly that trapped ships, about the builders and their kindness. The builder leader wanted Shaw to make sure that when other humans inevitably came to this world, they would know to trust the builders. Amy translated this for the builder leader, who had followed them into the cave. The alien skin rippled with soft blue and gold, colors that meant remembering or honoring the past. "The promise was kept," Amy said softly, watching the builder's reaction. Even though Shaw might not have made it home, the builders kept teaching their children about humans. They kept the knowledge of the launch system alive. They kept the promise, even without knowing if Shaw succeeded. Pete reached the end of the visible text. The last thing Shaw carved was a date and a simple message. "Today we launch. If you are reading this, know that we tried. Know that the builders are your friends. Trust them as we trusted them. And tell our families that we never stopped trying to come home." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Danny stood, brushing dust from his uniform. "We need to search the area around this planet. If Shaw's shuttle made it to orbit, there might be wreckage, or a beacon, something that tells us what happened." Lisa ran the scans from the Columbus's damaged sensors. It took 3 days of careful searching, but she found it. A debris field in high orbit, spreading slowly through space. The remains of a shuttle, torn apart long ago. "There's a beacon," Lisa reported, her voice heavy. "Still transmitting barely. The power cell is almost dead, but I can read the data. It's from the Pathfinder shuttle. They made it to orbit, Captain. They actually made it." "What happened?" Danny asked. Lisa pulled up the beacon's log. "They were in orbit for 11 days. The log shows they were trying to reach the nearest navigation beacon, but their shuttle wasn't designed for long-distance travel. It was built to reach orbit, nothing more. They ran into problems, life support failures, engine troubles. The last log entry says they were attempting one final burn to reach the navigation beacon, even though their calculations showed it was risky." "They didn't make it," Greg said quietly. "No. The debris pattern suggests a catastrophic engine failure during that final burn." "The shuttle broke apart. There's no way anyone survived." Danny closed his eyes. Shaw and her crew had made it so close. They had done everything right. They had reached orbit using a launch system built by hand on an alien world. But in the end, it hadn't been enough. "They were heroes," Pete said. "They tried everything to save their crew, and even knowing they might fail, they left instructions for us. They made sure we would have a chance." Amy wiped tears from her eyes. The builders never knew what happened. They waited for Shaw to come back, or for the rescue she promised to send. But it never came. And still they kept the knowledge. Still they waited. For 800 years. The builder leader's skin flashed a pattern Amy had never seen before. Complex, layered, full of emotion. She thought it might mean sorrow mixed with pride, grief for the lost ones, but pride in the promise kept. "We have to finish this," Danny said firmly. "Shaw tried to save her crew. We're going to save ours. And when we get home, we're going to make sure everyone knows what happened here. We're going to tell Shaw's story. We're going to honor the promise the builders kept for centuries. The construction accelerated. Now that the humans knew the full story, they worked with renewed purpose. Greg incorporated modern technology into the ancient design, improving efficiency while respecting the basic principles. Lisa calculated the optimal launch window and trajectory. Jake made sure every crew member was physically ready for the stress of launch. The builders seemed to understand the change in the humans. They worked. Danny spent 3 sleepless nights making his decision. Choosing who would take the shuttle to safety and who would stay behind felt like choosing who would live and who might die. The rescued crew would reach civilization and send help back, but that help might take months or even years to arrive. He called a meeting of the entire crew. 30 survivors gathered in the shadow of the launch platform, watching their captain with tired, hopeful eyes. "I'm not going to lie to you," Danny began. "This is the hardest choice I've ever made. 15 people can take the shuttle. The rest of us will stay here and wait for rescue." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some looked relieved, others looked terrified. "I need our best navigator, so Kyle goes. We need someone who can report on what happened here accurately, so Amy goes. The shuttle will need constant repairs during the journey, so Greg goes. And we need to make sure everyone who leaves is healthy enough to survive the trip, so Jake will choose the rest based on medical readiness." "Captain," Kyle interrupted, "you should be on that shuttle. You're the captain. Your report will carry more weight than anyone else's." Danny shook his head. "Shaw stayed with her crew. I'm staying with mine. That's final." Over the next 2 days, the final crew was chosen. 15 people. The healthiest and most skilled for the journey ahead. Kyle would pilot, Lisa would navigate, Greg would handle engineering, Amy would document everything and serve as their expert on the builders. The others were specialists they would need to convince Earth's authorities to send help quickly. The night before launch, the builders held a ceremony. Thousands of them gathered around the platform, their skin glowing with soft, beautiful patterns. The builder leader approached each departing human, touching them gently in what Amy had learned was a gesture of blessing. Danny stood with the 15 who were leaving. "You know what you have to do," he told them. "Get to the nearest colony, send help, and tell them about this place. Tell them about the builders. Make sure everyone knows what happened to Shaw and her crew." "We won't let you down, Captain," Kyle promised. The launch was scheduled for dawn. As the sun rose over the alien jungle, the crew made their final preparations. The shuttle was loaded with supplies, data recordings, and samples. Greg ran through the pre-flight checks one last time, while Lisa confirmed their trajectory. Danny gathered the 15 who were staying behind. "We're going to be okay," he told them. "We have food, water, and shelter. The builders will help us. And rescue will come. We just have to be patient." Megan nodded firmly. "We survived the crash, Captain. We can survive this." The builders had explained through color patterns and gestures how the launch system worked. The massive crystals embedded in the platform would release their stored energy in a controlled burst. The energy would propel the shuttle upward with enough force to break orbit. It was simple, elegant, and according to Shaw's calculations, it worked. Kyle and the others boarded the shuttle. Through the small windows, Danny could see them strapping into their seats. Greg gave him a thumbs up from the engineering station. Amy pressed her hand against the window in a gesture of goodbye. The builder leader approached Danny. Its skin flashed a complex pattern, and even without Amy there to translate, Danny understood. Good journey, safe travel. Return with friends. "We will," Danny promised. "We'll come back, and next time we'll come the right way, as friends, not by accident." The countdown began. The builders who understood human numbers had learned to count backward from 10. Their skin flashed with the numbers, a beautiful display of cooperation and understanding. 10, 9, 8. The crystals began to glow, building up energy from the planet's electromagnetic field. 7, 6, 5. The shuttle's engines came online, adding their power to the system. 4, 3, 2. Danny held his breath. 1. The platform erupted in light. The crystals released their energy in a massive, controlled burst. The shuttle shot upward on a pillar of brilliant blue and white light, faster than anything Danny had ever seen. It punched through the atmosphere in seconds, leaving a trail of ionized air. The builder's skin flashed with patterns of joy and celebration. They had done it. After 800 years, they had successfully launched another shuttle. They had kept the promise. Danny watched through binoculars as the shuttle became a tiny dot against the sky, then disappeared completely. "Good luck," he whispered. "Bring them home." The builders immediately began dismantling the launch platform. They worked carefully, preserving every component, storing them in the same caves where they had kept the knowledge for centuries. They would be ready when the next ship came. Whether it took months or years or centuries, they would be ready. Life settled into a routine for the remaining crew. They repaired what they could of the Columbus, turning the wreck into a more comfortable shelter. The builders taught them how to find food in the jungle, how to avoid dangerous plants and animals, how to read the weather patterns. Danny learned more of the color language, enough to have simple conversations with the builder leader. He learned about their culture, their history, their way of life. They were a peaceful people, content with their world, but always curious about what lay beyond the stars. 4 months after the launch, Danny was working in the makeshift garden they had started when he heard a familiar sound. Engines, spacecraft engines. He ran out of the shelter, shading his eyes against the sun. There, descending through the clouds, were 3 ships. Real ships, human ships, with proper hulls and working engines. The builders gathered, their skin flashing with excitement. They had kept the faith. The sky people had returned. The ships landed in the clearing near the Columbus wreck. Danny and his crew gathered as the airlocks opened. Kyle was the first one out, grinning from ear to ear. "We made it, Captain," he called. "We made it to the colony, and we told them everything." Behind him came officials from the colony, scientists, engineers, and reporters. And behind them, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She approached Danny slowly, tears running down her face. "I'm Helen Shaw," she said. "Elizabeth Shaw was my great-great-great-grandmother. Thank you for finding her journal. Thank you for finishing what she started." Danny felt his own tears coming. She was a hero. They all were. Over the next week, the area around the crash site transformed into a hub of activity. Scientists studied the builders, amazed by their technology and culture. Engineers examined the stored components of the launch platform, learning from the fusion of human and alien design. Reporters interviewed everyone, eager to tell the story of the ancient partnership. But the most important moment came when Danny, Helen Shaw, and the builder leader stood together in the cave where Elizabeth Shaw had carved her journal. Helen placed her hand on the ancient stone, reading her ancestors' words. "She wanted you to know something," Helen said to the builder leader through Amy's translation. "We found her personal logs in the colony archives. In her last entry before the launch, she wrote that meeting, your people, was the greatest honor of her life. She wrote that if humanity had any hope of surviving among the stars, it would be because we learned to be more like the builders, kind, generous, and faithful to our promises." The builder leader's skin flashed through a rainbow of colors. Pride, joy, sorrow, hope, all mixed together. Amy translated the response. "The leader says that Shaw and her crew taught the builders something too. They taught them that not all strangers are enemies, that knowledge is more powerful when shared, that a promise kept across centuries is worth more than any treasure." Danny looked around the cave, at the ancient carvings and Shaw's journal carved in stone. "This can't be the end," he said. "This has to be the beginning. We need to establish a permanent human presence here, not to colonize, but to learn, to build a real partnership with the builders." That's already in the works, Helen said with a smile. The colonial government has approved a research station. Volunteers are already signing up. Scientists, teachers, engineers, people who want to work with the builders to learn from them and teach them in return. And the gravitational anomaly? Danny asked. We're setting up warning beacons, Kyle explained. Ships will know to avoid the area. But we're also establishing a rescue protocol. If another ship gets pulled out of hyperspace, we'll be ready to help. And the builders will be here, ready to build another launch platform if needed. The builder leader's skin flashed a pattern that Amy had come to know well. It meant continuity. The unbroken chain. In the following months, Danny watched the research station take shape. Human and builder construction techniques merged to create buildings that belong to both species. Children from the colony came to learn the color language. Builder young ones learned English and mathematics. Scientists from both species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The Columbus wreck was preserved as a memorial, just as the Pathfinder crash site had been found and honored. Both sites stood as reminders of the price of exploration and the value of friendship across species. Danny walked through the research station one evening, watching humans and builders working side by side. A builder child was teaching a human child how to read color patterns. A human engineer was showing builder craftspeople how to use advanced scanning tools. This was Shaw's real legacy, Danny realized. Not the launch platform, not the technical knowledge. It was this: the proof that different species could work together, learn from each other, and build something greater than either could create alone. The ancient way, as the builders called it, wasn't just about building launch platforms. It was about building bridges between species, about keeping promises across centuries, about having faith that kindness would be rewarded with kindness. 800 years ago, Elizabeth Shaw had crashed on an alien world and found friends. She had trusted them with her life and the lives of her crew. That trust had been honored across centuries, kept alive by people who had never met her but remembered her with love. Now Danny and his crew were part of that same story, adding their chapter to a tale of friendship and cooperation that would continue for generations to come. He looked up at the stars, thinking about all the worlds out there, all the species humanity had yet to meet. If they could approach each new encounter with the same openness and respect that Shaw had shown the builders, the same generosity the builders had shown to strangers in need, maybe humanity really did have a future among the stars. The ancient way forward was simply this: treat others as friends until they prove otherwise. Share knowledge freely, keep your promises, and have faith that the bonds you build will outlast any individual life. It was a lesson 800 years old and still perfectly true. Ardor brought more materials, spent longer hours on the construction. Their skin patterns became brighter, more energetic. They were excited. After 800 years, they were finally completing what they had started with Shaw and her crew. 6 weeks after the crash, the launch platform stood complete. It rose from the jungle floor like a monument, a fusion of human engineering and builder craftsmanship. At its center sat a shuttle, built from salvaged Columbus parts and new components created using techniques from both species. The structure was covered in carvings. The builders had decorated it with images telling the story. Images of the Pathfinder crash, images of Shaw and her crew working alongside the builders, images of the first launch, and new images showing the Columbus crash and the new partnership. Danny stood before the completed platform, overwhelmed by what they had accomplished. In 6 weeks, 2 species had worked together to build something that should have taken years. They had bridged the gap between human technology and builder knowledge. They had honored a promise 800 years old. Now came the hard part. The shuttle could only hold 15 people. Danny had to choose who would go and who would stay behind to wait for rescue, just like Shaw had done so long ago. That started centuries ago. A partnership between humans and builders. Greg looked at the technical specifications carved into the stone. According to this, we should be helping them. Shaw's crew worked alongside the builders. They taught each other. That's how they made it work. Danny nodded. Then that's what we'll do. Amy, work with the builder leader. Find out how we can help. Greg, Pete, study those specifications. If Shaw left us a blueprint, we're going to use it. Lisa, calculate our launch window. If we're really going to do this, we need to do it right. As they left the cave, Danny took one last look at Shaw's carved journal. 800 years ago, a human crew had crashed on this world. They had met the builders, learned from them, trusted them. And together, they had built something amazing. Now it was Danny's turn to honor that ancient partnership. The builders had kept their promise for centuries. The least he could do was keep his crew alive long enough to complete what Shaw had started. The construction continued, faster now that the humans understood what was being built. The builders welcomed their help, showing them where to place salvaged components, teaching them how to shape the special crystals, working together as their ancestors had done long ago. Amy examined the wear on the carvings, the way the stone had aged. Centuries. Maybe longer. These are old, Captain. Really old. Outside, the sound of construction continued. The builders worked with purpose and determination, following some ancient plan passed down through generations. They were building something for the humans, just as their ancestors had done long ago. Danny watched them work, hope and fear mixing in his chest. Whatever they were building, it was their only chance, their only way home. The lights came closer. They moved with purpose, with intelligence. Whatever was out there, it knew the Columbus had crashed. It knew they were here, and it was coming to investigate. Danny's hand went to the emergency flare gun at his belt. Around him, the crew gathered, tired and wounded and scared. They had survived the crash. Now they would find out if they could survive what came next. The lights reached the edge of their camp and stopped. In the firelight, Danny could finally see what carried them. His breath caught in his throat. They weren't alone on this world, and their real test was just beginning.